The apparition of La Salette is another unusual one, from the seers right down to Our Lady's message. As I researched the story, I was surprised and confused about how much Our Lady talked about potatoes and crops. While I understood that some of this was meant to be taken figuratively, I also knew she was speaking in literal terms. And why was she so distraught? Her message is the same as Lourdes and Fatima, to pray and make sacrifices. But the message of La Salette also deliberately points out complaints that our Lord has for his people and what will happen if hearts don't change. During my research, I've learned a little bit more about what the messages mean, which we will soon talk about. Let us start our story with the Two Seers of La Salette. Melanie was 14 years old at the time of the apparitions. She was born in Corpse. She worked as a hired hand as a cowherd, and this is where she met Maximin. She was uneducated in school and catechism and hardly attended church on Sundays since she had to work. Despite this, she was described as a good and humble child with a sweet temperament. She had a sad childhood, however. It is said that she was thrown out of the house at the age of 3 years old by her mother, and that she was taken care of by Jesus himself, where he appeared to her as a boy and told her that he was her older brother. However, this is another story that we'll talk about maybe more one day. Maximin was also born in Corpse and worked as a cowherd. He was 11 years old at the time of the apparitions. Maximin is described as a total opposite of Melanie. While Melanie tended to be timid, Maximin was very outgoing. It's said that he was also uneducated, having never gone to school, and that he preferred to play rather than go to church. However, he was kind and generally good. He was generous to a fault and always busy entertaining himself. That wonderful day they saw Our Lady, September 19th, 1846, Melanie and Maxim took the herd of cows to the ravine by the side of the mountain so that the cows could drink. While they drank, Melanie and Maximin ate their lunch of bread and cheese while chatting for a bit. Afterwards, they crossed over the brook and fell asleep. Melanie writes, "I awoke first, and at first I could not see my cows. I immediately roused Maximin and said, 'Come quick, let's look for our cows.' Maximin also writes, "And we went looking after our cows, and on turning around, we found them lying down on the opposite slope upon an elevation." Relieved to find the herd, they quickly returned to the ravine to retrieve their knapsacks so they could bring the cows out to pasture. Melanie said, "We were hardly more than halfway down toward the bed of the ravine when I saw a bright light over there, above the stones where the knapsacks lay. It was as bright as the sun, much brighter even, but not of the same color." Maximin's account is similar but much simpler. "And we saw a great light near the spring." Melanie saw it first. Melanie called Maximin to come look. The bright light was formed in a sparkling globe, turning around slowly. Inside the globe, they saw the form of a woman. Now, after I told Maximin to come and look, I saw part of the light open, and I began to see a pair of hands that grew intensely white. They were raised to a face which concealed almost entirely. I couldn't distinguish things very well because the light dazzled me. On a stone bench sat Our Lady of La Salette, although the children didn't realize that this was the Blessed Virgin. She then stood up and faced the children. Upon doing so, the children became very afraid, and Melanie dropped her stick. Maximin told Melanie, "Keep your stick now. I'll hold on to mine and I'll give her a good whack." Our Lady was not offended by Maximin's words, as she already understood that he only meant to defend himself and Melanie. She said to the children, "Come near, my children. Be not afraid. I am here to tell you great news." After this, the children felt no fear. Melanie said, "As soon as she told us to come near her, we promptly came down from the bed to the ravine. We crossed the brook right in front of her, and we approached her so close that we could have touched her. She advanced to the spot where we had previously fallen asleep. It was only then that they realized that this was a woman. They hadn't been sure at first, although they did see her silhouette in the globe as the form of a woman, but the light had been so bright and dazzling that they weren't sure. Now, standing very close to her, they could see her face, although the light still dazzled their eyes. They could see that she had been crying. The beautiful woman looked at them for a moment, but then cast her eyes downward and kept them that way as she talked. Melanie noted, "She wept all the while that she spoke to us. I did see the tears flow from her eyes. They flowed in a steady stream." As they waited for her to speak, Melanie stood quietly and modestly before her. Maximin, on the other hand, behaved in front of the Blessed Virgin as though he would behave before anyone else. He played with his shepherd's stick by twirling his hat on it and pushed little stones around with it. Some of them even rolled next to the Blessed Virgin's feet. As we hear from Lourdes and Fatima and other approved apparitions, the seers were always on their knees, overcome with fear, awe, and reverence. And here Maximin is twirling his hat on a stick. In fact, although the woman was very beautiful and dressed in beautiful clothes, he thought that she was a neighboring poor woman and that perhaps she wanted to steal their lunch, which is why he told Melanie that he would give her a good whack if she tried to harm them. He also assumed that as Our Lady was talking about not being able to hold back her son's arm any longer, that she must come from a poor family that needed food and was threatened that she would be beaten by her son if she didn't come home with food. Later, when Maximin retells this story, someone chided him for his lack of politeness and reverence, but he only said that he had not realized who the woman was. Had he known it was the Blessed Virgin, he would have been on his best behavior. So how did the Blessed Virgin handle Maximin's behavior as he twirled his hat on his shepherd's stick? She handled it as a mother who understands her son and waited patiently until he was ready to listen. The Blessed Virgin then said, "If my people will not submit, I shall be forced to let go of the arm of my son. It is so strong, so heavy, that I can no longer hold it. For how long a time do I suffer for you? If I would not have my son abandon you, I am compelled to pray to him without ceasing. As to you, you take no heed of it. However much you pray, however much you do, you will never recompense the pains I have taken for you. 6 days have I given you to labor, the 7th I have kept for myself, and they will not give it to me. It is this which makes the arm of my son so heavy. Those who drive the carts cannot swear without including the name of my son. These are the 2 things which make the arm of my son so heavy." Hearing the children repeat the message as, 6 days have I given to you to labor, priests and others would often change it to, my son has given you 6 days to labor. Melanie and Maximin would stubbornly argue against this, as Melanie said one time, "There are priests who come to question us and they write down what I say. Then they say, it is not possible that the Blessed Virgin spoke thus, and so they put down what they please. It is all the same to me, I let them do so, but I myself speak as I have heard." As one author puts it, the Blessed Virgin, while speaking directly, spoke nevertheless in the name of God. The expression, 6 days have I given to you to labor, is far more forceful and impressive than the indirect phrasing, my son has given you 6 days to labor. Our Lady continued, "If the harvest is spoiled, it is all on your account. I gave you warning last year in the potatoes, but you did not heed it. On the contrary, when you found the potatoes spoiled, you swore, you took the name of my son in vain. They will continue to decay, so that by Christmas there will be none left." The year before, the potato crops had suffered severe ruin in the local areas. And instead of humbling themselves and recognizing the chastisements from heaven and trying to reform their lives, the farmers instead turned their blasphemies against God. Here, Maximin, still not understanding that he was talking to the Blessed Virgin, but simply to an unhappy woman, interjected with, "Oh, not so, madame. The potatoes won't all go. We'll surely find a few." However, what the Blessed Virgin said was true, as by Christmas time there were no potatoes left, and scarcely found even just a few to plant for the next harvest. On top of this, any potatoes that were around, even miles away, were decaying from disease. This meant that the cost for potatoes skyrocketed, and hardly anyone could afford to buy any, and what they could get was surely diseased. This disease of the potatoes spread throughout in France, England, Germany, and Ireland. However, because the people of Corpse heeded the warning of the Blessed Virgin and had since amended their ways, they had enjoyed good and abundant harvests of wheat, grapes, and of course, potatoes. The children, however, were very confused by the lady's message, as they only spoke in Padua, and the beautiful lady was speaking in French. And so, while the Blessed Virgin was telling the children that there would be no potatoes by Christmas, Melanie looked at Maximin to see if he understood. She said, "I did not understand what she had said. I did not understand what she meant by petets." I was about to ask Maximin if he knew what petets were, when at once the lady said, "Ah, my children, you do not understand. I shall say it a different way." And then she spoke in Padua. Interestingly, because in the village of Corpse, only Padua was spoken, so it's interesting that Melanie could follow anything that the Blessed Virgin had spoken since she was speaking in French. Melanie had picked up a little French here and there from outsiders that visited Corpse, and she continued to learn a little French after the apparition, so as to be able to answer the pilgrims' questions, although she always struggled with French. However, the true miracle, and perhaps the first sign to others who questioned the children, was that even though she and Maximin did not understand any French at the time of the apparition, they were still able to tell the message word for word in their own language, even though Our Lady had spoken in French. The lady went on, "If you have wheat, you must not sow it. All that you will sow, the beasts will eat it, and what will remain, that the animals will not have eaten, the year which it comes, it will crumble into dust when you beat it. There will come a great famine. Before the famine comes, children under 7 will take a quake from which they will die at the hands of those who hold him. The others will do their penance in starvation. The nuts will become spoiled and the grapes will rot, but if they convert, the stones and rocks will become heaps of wheat, and the potatoes will be sown for the coming year. In the summer, only a few older women go to Mass on Sundays, and the others work, and in the winter the boys, when they don't know what to do, only go to Mass to make fun of religion. People don't make Lent, they go to the butchers like dogs. It is true that in the town of Corpse, Sundays were not being honored by many. Instead, they worked in the fields or did chores at home. When people went to Mass, it was treated more like a social. When Our Lady said that the people come to church only to mock religion, she was referring to a lack of piety and seriousness, although no one outwardly mocked religion. They didn't pray well, if at all. They didn't dress appropriately for Mass, and most didn't pay attention during the consecration. Certain boys of the parish made it a game to carry pebbles in their pockets to throw at girls in order to make them turn around at Mass, followed by lots of giggling and laughing. So when Our Lady said, "People don't make Lent, they go to the butchers like dogs," again the Blessed Virgin was referring to the lack of attention during Lent. Others believe that she was comparing people's attitudes toward fasting, like dogs prowling around a butcher shop. She then asked them, "Do you say your prayers well, my children?" They both told her, "No, Madame, not very well." Maximin reports, "Then she said to us, 'Ah, my children, you must be sure to say them well, morning and evening. When you cannot do better, say at least an Our Father and a Hail Mary. But when you have time, say more.'" The beautiful lady then asked, "Have you never seen wheat that was spoiled, my children?" Both Melanie and Maximin told her they hadn't. Actually, they had seen spoiled wheat, but they didn't remember, as it didn't bear much significance to them. The Blessed Virgin now was about to bring this to mind. She said to Maximin, "But you, my child, you must have surely seen some, once when you were near the farm of Coin with your father." She reminded him, "The master of the field told your father to go and see his ruined wheat. You went both together. You took 2 or 3 of the ears into your hands and rubbed them, and they all fell into dust. Then you returned home." It's true that Maximin's father was very distraught seeing this, saying, "What will we do this year if the wheat continues to decay like this?" The Blessed Virgin went on, "While you were still a half an hour's distance from Corpse, your father gave you a piece of bread and said to you, 'Here, my child, eat some bread this year at least. I don't know who will eat any next year if the wheat goes on like this.'" Maximin then remembered the incident that the lady was talking about and said, "Oh yes, Madame, I recollect. I just did not remember it." Why did Our Lady bring this to mind? For Maximin, it was nothing but a mere moment, but the Blessed Virgin used this memory to help others believe. For after the apparition, Maximin told all this to his father, and he believed. No one had known about the ruined wheat because he hadn't said anything, and he knew that Maximin didn't understand the significance of it to remember. He was moved to tears when Maximin told him this, and he said to him affectionately, "There now, you're too dense a child to have invented or learned such a tale." Then Our Lady was about to take her leave in a rather unusual way. Melanie said, when she had ended these last words, she turned suddenly and crossed the brook, and then, without turning towards us, she said in French, "Well, my children, you will make this known to all my people." The Blessed Mother kept walking away, crossing over the brook, and using one of the stones as a stepping stone to cross. That stone was reportedly picked up and carried away by pilgrims 15 days after the apparition. Again, without turning back to the children, she said, "Well, my children, you will make this known to all my people," as she continued to walk in a southeastern direction. 20 feet away, she made her last exhortation, engraving her words deeply into the hearts of the children. "Well, my children, you will make this known to all my people." Despite the fact that she said this in French, the children never forgot the words, even if they didn't totally understand them. Melanie says, "Then she ascended the height as far as the spot where we had gone to look for our cows. We noticed that as she walked up, she did not set her feet on the ground, but moved along on the tips of the grass without even bending them. The children followed the Blessed Virgin silently, so captivated by her voice and beauty." Melanie then said, "Then, after a very brief pause, this beautiful lady began to rise a little more than 3 feet above the ground. She remained suspended a moment in the air. Then she gazed to heaven and down to earth." Maximin adds, "And then we saw her head no more, then her arms no more, and then her feet no more. She seemed to melt away. She vanished suddenly." Later, when questioned by the people about what Maximin meant when he said she began to melt away, he said, "She melted before our eyes like butter in a frying pan." Melanie said, "And we now saw nothing but a great light in the air. It lasted only for an instant, and it vanished suddenly at the same height." Overwhelmed and yet animated by what they saw, the children began to speculate who the lady could have been. Melanie said, "Perhaps it's a great saint." Maximin said, "If we had known it was a great saint, we would have told her to take us along with her." However, after telling everyone about the amazing encounter, it was Melanie's mistress who was able to identify the woman as the Blessed Virgin. And from here, word spread. The children were told to tell the cure of La Salette about the message and the apparition. The cure took the message very seriously and began to jot down everything that the children told him, and then spoke about it in his sermon to the faithful. The children were each given a secret to keep and to not tell anyone until an appointed time, and to the Pope only. Maximin's letter to the Pope is simple, as always. "I do not know if it is the Blessed Virgin or another person. As for me, I believe today that it is the Blessed Virgin. Here is what this lady said to me. If my people continue, what I will say to you will arrive earlier. If it changes a little, it will be a little later. France has corrupted the universe. One day it will be punished. The faith will die out in France. 3/4 of France will not practice religion anymore, or almost no more. The other part will practice it without really practicing it. Then after that, nations will convert. The faith will be rekindled everywhere. A great country in the north of Europe, now Protestant, will be converted. By the support of this country, all the other nations of the world will be converted. Before all of that arrives, great disorders will arrive, in the church and everywhere. Then, after that, our Holy Father the Pope will be persecuted. His successor will be a pontiff that nobody expects. After that, a great peace will come, but it will not last a long time. A monster will come to disturb it. All that I tell you will arrive in the other century, at the latest in the year 2000. And Melanie's secret. Melanie, I will say something to you which you will not say to anybody. The time of God's wrath has arrived. If, when you say to the people what I have said to you so far, and what I will still ask you to say, if after that they do not convert, if they do not do penance and do not cease working on Sunday, and if they continue to blaspheme the holy name of God. In a word, if the face of the earth does not change, God will be avenged against the people ungrateful and slave of the demon. My son will make his power manifest. Paris, this city spoiled by all kinds of crimes, will perish infallibly. Marseille will be destroyed in a little time. When these things arrive, the disorder will be complete on the earth. The world will be given up to its impious passions. The Pope will be persecuted from all sides. They will shoot at him. They will want to put him to death, but no one will be able to do it. The Vicar of God will triumph again this time. The priests and the sisters and the true servants of my Son will be persecuted, and several will die for the faith of Jesus Christ. A famine will reign at the same time. After all these will have arrived, many will recognize the hand of God on them. They will convert, and they will do penance for their sins. A great king will go up on the throne and will reign a few years. Religion will reflourish and spread all over the world, and there will be a great abundance. The world, glad not to be lacking nothing, will fall again in its disorders, will give up God, and will be prone to its criminal passions. Among God's ministers and the spouses of Jesus Christ, there will be some who will go astray, and that will be most terrible. Lastly, hell will reign on earth. It will be then that the Antichrist will be born of a sister, but woe to her. Many will believe in him because he will claim to have come from heaven. Woe to those who will believe in him. That time is not far away. Twice 50 years will not go by. My child, you will not say what I have just said to you. You will not say to anybody. You will not say what that it concerns. And finally, you will say nothing anymore until I tell you to say it. She ends with, I pray to our Holy Father the Pope to give me his holy blessing. After the apparition, the people of Corpse reformed their ways, and to this day are a very devoted people. On September 19, 1851, the local bishop formally approved the public devotion and prayers to Our Lady of La Salette. On August 21, 1879, Pope Leo XIII granted a canonical coronation to the image now located within the Basilica of Our Lady of La Salette. We shouldn't be overly disturbed by this message. Our Lady did not come to frighten us, but to warn us and to inspire us to change. Do you use God's name in vain? Do you keep Sundays for Him? Can we increase our prayers? Limit our screen time? Spend time with family? Let's give Sundays back to God and keep His name holy. Let's not just listen to the story, but do as Our Lady asks.